Hi, thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations here at the Advent Christian Village. We are nice and warm and cozy at the Harmony Center, and today I want to introduce you to our guest, Ken Wood. Mr. Wood, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
You have lived near the village for a number of years, but let's start. You're an off-campus member.
All right.
And but let's start. Where were you originally? Where did you arrive in this world?
Well, I'm a Florida cracker.
Me too.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
Well, I grew up in the next county,
Which one?
Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
Or Lafayette, if you want to be precise.
But if you're from around here, it's Lafayette.
Yeah.
And did you grow up there?
Yes, when I was born in a different place in Levy County, but when I was about a year old, the house burned and I lost everything. So they moved south of Branford and to the community after there.
And did you have brothers or sisters?
Yes, there was 6 of us total.
And what was your father's occupation?
It's a good question. He was a farmer, he drilled wells, he was a carpenter, and he also sold windmills and installed them.
I remember seeing one. There was one on 136 for a while. I think it's finally about down. Were they prevalent in this area?
Yes, particularly in Lafayette County, but he put quite a few in different places. The strange thing was we never owned a windmill, but he sold and installed them.
And what are some of your fond memories of growing up?
Oh my. I don't know, probably our family was pretty close knit. And I would say primarily that type of thing.
Family activities?
Yeah.
What about church? Were you involved in church growing up?
I don't recall the first time I ever went to church. It's probably before I was born. Because we grew up in church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, all of it.
And did you complete school in Lafayette County?
Yes.
And what happened after that?
Well, you mean as far as education?
Yes.
Well, I enrolled in the University of Florida, and most of the time I went back and forth. I had to hitchhike. I didn't have a car or anything. But I finished up 4 years there.
And what was your degree?
Well, I was a bachelor in education. Also, I got a master of education later.
And
It's probably not of importance, but I attended some lectures from the German professors in Heidelberg, and so I got a little plaque from that, which was kind of interesting, just as a souvenir.
Mm-hmm. And so you were in Germany for those interviews?
And
or lectures?
Well, they drafted me in the service, and that's where I wound up.
And were you still in college when you were drafted, or was that?
Oh, I had finished 4 degrees. I finished my degree in 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And had you not been drafted, what were you planning to do after college?
Teach primarily.
Mm-hmm. And what areas have you taught in?
It was industrial arts education. I taught a math class in Sewanee High for a short time for just one class, but primarily mine was industrial arts education.
Well, I have a question. Was your father being a carpenter what got you interested in woodworking, or?
Well, one time he told me he thought that I came here wanting to build something. I guess it just came naturally. I don't know.
Well, you've certainly done a lot of woodworking during your career, or during your life, haven't you?
Yeah, a lot of sawdust.
Mr. Wood, when did you meet your wife, and where?
When first employment that I had as a teacher went to Jennings. That's in Florida.
Yes.
And I was walking by a window, and here was a skinny young woman standing in there, and they introduced me to her. And later I asked her to a meal that the Lions Club was putting on. And they asked the wives, the men to list their wives if they wanted another one. And when they passed the tablet, and she caught it first, and she put her initials on it. So, I thought it was a little odd, but anyway, that's where we met.
And did you date for a long time? Or?
Yeah, for several weeks.
That
Just,
long?
we wouldn't call it dating, but we just went places.
And you knew that was the one?
Not at that time. It's difficult to say exactly, but of course, over time, we got a little more acquainted.
Let's back up for a minute. You were drafted and you were sent to Germany, or originally did you go for training?
I was drafted and sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and had 6 months infantry. That's unusual. It's 6 months.
So were you well prepared when you went? When you were transferred? I mean, when you had a regular assignment?
Well, it's involved, but I was in leadership school, which they said they were training us to be squad leaders in Korea. Mm-hmm. But 2 weeks before I got out of leadership school, they quit shooting in Korea. So when I got my orders, it was to Germany. And when I got to Germany, to the place that they assigned us, they sent me, of all places, to Heidelberg, to headquarters USER. And if you could imagine now, I had one stripe, mm-hmm. and was in the infantry all this time. So they put me in an office with a warrant officer typing, bird colonel next door, and another one next to him, 3 light colonels downstairs, and generals all over the place. So it's a total switch. I had nothing to do with it. I had passed a typing test. Mm-hmm. So it's like the military. You never know what they're going to do.
And how long were you there?
19 months.
And what was your next assignment?
Well, that was it.
Okay, then your term was,
right.
Your enlistment was up. And you headed back to Florida?
Yes, I guess might be interested to know that when I was in leadership school in Fort Jackson, my wife and I decided to get married, and it was a real question about it. And I told her if we did, I said, there's no way we're going to have a permanent home as long as I'm in the military, probably. So I came home on Saturday, got married. I came home on Friday, got married on Saturday, went back to Fort Jackson on Sunday, and Monday morning back on the post. We were married 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Then they sent me to Germany, and I was gone 16 months. That ain't no way to start a marriage.
I bet not. How long were you and your wife married?
61 years.
And for our viewers...
I'd have kept her for 10 more if the good Lord had let me.
Mm-hmm. And her name was?
Mary Jean Nunn. I married a nun.
You did. There are not a lot of people that can say that, probably. And most of your life, then you, as a married couple, you lived in this area as well. Is that right?
Most of the time in Live Oak, of course. I taught 1 year in Leonhardt and Tallahassee. I taught 1 year in Santa Fe and Lafayette in Alachua County. And we left and went to Lake Butler for 5 years. In fact, I started a program, industrial arts program in Sewanee High and also in Lake Butler.
For our viewers, would you describe when you started at what an industrial arts program consisted of?
It had primarily to do with technical subjects. Mostly I taught was woodworking, but of course we also did some plastics. This is one of them.
Oh my goodness.
And I taught drafting, and also in Lake Butler I taught a little electronics. So it's a technical subjects, but.
And were you employed in Sewanee County at the Votech School?
No, I was never part of the Votech school. It was in the high school. Mm-hmm. See, the Votech came after this program of mine had been established quite a number of years.
That was what I was thinking, because I know when I was growing up, there weren't Votech schools,
Right, no.
but there were industrial arts and in our high school at that time. And your wife was also a teacher, is that correct?
Right. She taught elementary primarily.
And you have a son?
Son is Kenny.
Mm-hmm. And Kenny lives here in the village, is that correct?
Yes, I don't know whether you want me to go into the details about his background or not, but
Whatever you're comfortable to share, Ken.
my wife carried him for 10 months. And she started with the doctor, and the doctor left and another one took over. And that doctor, I was a little bit too stupid to know better, but he let her go for 10 months. And we finally switched doctors in the hospital. Mm-hmm. He was born in Valdosta. But when he came out of the delivery room, he had bruises all over his head. Plus he had seizures. And I didn't expect him to live, at least for 2 weeks. So, and there's quite a long history of care for him. Mm-hmm. We had not planned to just have one child, but there were a lot of different circumstances that wound up that way.
Well, I see you and Kenny a lot together. It seems like you're good companions.
And he's a darling of all the old ladies.
Yes, he is. He lives in Wilson Gardens, is that right?
Yes.
And I see him doing water volleyball and out and about other places.
That he always calls me, we go into the gym. So what you means by that is volleyball.
Uh-huh. In fact, yesterday afternoon, I saw him when I was there doing my exercise. They were playing volleyball. When you said you always wanted to build something, did you build your home?
We built, actually I hired 2 union carpenters out of Live Oak. And they did a lot of the construction, but I helped along with it. Mm-hmm. I built all the cabinets and the interior petitions and whatnot. But
I'm sure that was a lot of satisfaction, though, doing that.
yes, it was, and it was a real nice setup there. We had a real pretty place with a nice little 5-acre lake behind and so forth.
About what year did you move to Dowling Park?
In about 2004.
And you have a home now on 136.
Yeah, we
near the village.
bought the place, my wife and I.
And I think I heard one of the requirements was you had to have a place for a shop.
Well, we didn't have to have, but I had some equipment, and my wife is quite good with a scroll saw also. In fact, sometimes if somebody comes out to see me, I can show a lot of her work too.
Great.
She was quite good, so both of us worked pretty well together on a lot of things.
That's a shared hobby you had.
Yes.
You've brought a piece today to share with our viewers. Would you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Well, I entered an art show in Valdosta and put a couple of pieces in it. And this was one of them. They juried two of them. In fact, it's a juried show, but they juried two pieces and they, I guess, skipped them there for 2 or 3 months, and then, of course, got a notice to come pick them up. Mm-hmm. This one was in the show, and later on I got a letter from the people with a check, I think $200 or $300. I told my wife, I said, I didn't put that kind of price on that thing. But then I got to looking, and I had won 3rd place in the 3D division. So this was primarily the reason for it.
And what kind of wood is that?
This is holly.
And what is the edging called? Around the top when you do?
It's just part of the bark.
It doesn't have a certain name when you do that? Oh, okay.
No, it's just part of the bark of the tree itself. Well, this is turned, the tree grew this way. Mm-hmm. And this is the center of the piece is right in the center in here.
When I picked it up, I was surprised at how light it is, but it's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Right now, you have some of your work displayed in the dining room in the cabinets there, I understand. I've seen it.
Yeah, that cabinet stayed empty for quite a number of years. So I asked if I couldn't put a few things in there. Of course, it had to go through the process of approval and whatnot. Mm-hmm. They finally did, so I have a display in there now. Well, I mean, it had nothing else in it for 6 months. So
it was looking lonely in there, wasn't it?
I couldn't figure out why not use it a little bit. And I changed it about once a week, changed the display about once a week or a little better.
Did, when you and your wife, after you retired, did you retire about the same time?
I retired in, I believe it's 83, and she did it, I think, in 84.
And I understand the two of you did a lot of traveling after that.
Yeah, we enjoyed traveling. I like the United States. It's a beautiful place, and there's a lot of interesting things in this country. Quite a few interesting things. I don't care a lot for I've attended meetings in different places, and one in Miami, Las Vegas, one place and another, but it was just meetings. Mm-hmm. I really am not interested in that type of thing much. I like to get out and see the people in the community, particularly in the small areas. That's where you meet real people, mm-hmm. rather than a lot of tinsel and so forth. So we visited about 30 different states, mostly after retirement. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite place that you visited?
That's hard to say because there's so many interesting places. The Grand Canyon is one of them. Of course, we saw Old Faithful, and mm-hmm. and there's just a lot of different places interesting. the Bay of Fundy, and out next to Maine. I don't know whether you're familiar or not, but
No, but it's on my bucket list of places to go.
well, in that the tide flows backwards. It's like they say, it comes in so forcefully until the river flows backwards for a little while, and the depth of that thing was probably 50 feet deep.
Wow.
But part of the time when the tide is out, you can walk all down there. So there's so many interesting things in this country that I love this country. It's a beautiful place.
Some of God's most beautiful handiwork was right around here, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
The handiwork of God in this creation.
Yeah.
When you were teaching, Mr. Wood, in your teaching career, primarily in industrial arts, were most of your students males?
Yes, they were. When I first started teaching, they wouldn't even put girls in my classes. But later on, after several years, then I had quite a few of them.
I asked that
In fact,
because
one of the best students I can think of was a tall girl, and she was quite good with it. Incidentally was a black student, but she was very good.
Because I think back to my days in high school, and I don't know that we were allowed to take industrial arts, but
When
I
I
don't
first
remember
started, they
anybody
weren't.
did. But I bet there are a lot more females in industrial arts programs and vocational programs along those lines. I believe you're a member of First Baptist Church?
In Live Oak still, yes.
And you've been a member a long time there, I understand.
We came there in 1957, and a few years that we went to Lake Butler, we transferred our letter there, but then when we came back to Live Oak, we changed our letter back to Live Oak again.
How would you describe, you said you grew up being in church if the doors were open. How has your faith helped you in your life?
Well, that's another subject that needs to go in sometime or other. I need to discuss probably. But I don't know how to answer it except that it's been primarily the central thing in my life. My wife and I both, I think, we're committed to the fact that we're going to stay married. Mm-hmm. And I guess this is unusual, but when I was in Heidelberg, I was walking down the street one day. I like to wander around town just to see what things were like. And they licensed prostitutes in Germany, which I didn't know, but they did. And I was walking along and saw this sign, Rodensteiner, and I had heard what it was, and I was tempted to go and just take a peek inside, and I stood and debating a little bit, and then a thought occurred to me, you're a Christian, you got no business in there. So I turned and walked down the street. But my wife and I, neither one, were unfaithful to the other person. And I can't say enough good about her in that respect. In fact, a lot of things about her.
Mm-hmm. And so you're still an active member there now, is that right?
I'm an active member, but I don't go much because of the transportation between here and Live Oak. I attend the church here most of the time, but occasionally I do go back to the church in Live Oak.
And having been a member there that long, I'm sure you have a lot of longtime friends there as well.
Yes, the only trouble is a lot of them are dead. A lot of my former students are dead.
Thinking of students and all the years you taught, what's the best advice you could give a young person today?
Oh. Well, there's this line from Shakespeare that I kind of like, and play Hamlet. The guy made a comment in there, said, "To thine only self be true, and then it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst then be false to any man." And I think if a person is, in fact, I think people ought to be committed to their country, and I think they ought to be committed to God more than anything else. I think one of the main problems we have today is the fact that people have no central boundary and no central set of standards to go by.
Those are great words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing them with us. And thanks for joining us today. And I look forward to hearing more about your woodworking.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to go by and see Mr. Wood's display in the dining room at the Phillips Center.